The giant metal doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast space. Dr. Sarah Chen walked slowly down the long corridor between rows of alien representatives, her simple black suit looking plain next to the colorful robes and strange armor of the other species. Her footsteps clicked on the polished floor as hundreds of eyes watched her approach the center podium. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 47 different worlds. Tall crystal beings from Altair Prime sparkled in their special atmospheric suits. The gas-formed nebulans floated in their containment fields like living clouds. Massive Krathan warriors sat in reinforced chairs, their thick arms crossed and their tusked faces showing obvious contempt. At the highest platform sat Admiral Kethavar of the Zephyrian Empire, his blue skin marked with the ritual scars of a career military leader. Chen reached the center podium and looked around the chamber. She had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, ever since the attacks began. 3 long years of watching human colonies burn while she sat in these same seats, asking politely for peace talks and humanitarian aid. 3 years of being ignored, dismissed, and laughed at by species who saw humans as nothing more than primitive animals who had stumbled into space travel by accident. Admiral Kethvar stood and activated the main display screen. Images filled the air above the chamber, showing the latest attacks on human settlements. The Epsilon colony burned as Zephyrian ships bombarded it from orbit. Mining Station 7 exploded in a ball of fire as hegemony raiders destroyed the evacuation ships. Shan watched her own people die on the screen and kept her face perfectly calm. "Honored representatives," Kethvar said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "We are here today to discuss the final surrender of the human species. For 3 years we have demonstrated their complete inability to defend themselves against proper military forces. Their ships are slow and poorly armed. Their tactics are clumsy and predictable. Their colonies fall within hours of our arrival." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen had heard these same words dozens of times before. The aliens were convinced that humans were weak, that Earth was defenseless, that humanity would either submit to slavery or face complete destruction. "Look at this evidence," Kethvar continued, gesturing to new images on the display. Human vessels fleeing from every engagement. Their so-called warships limping back to Earth with massive damage. Their defensive positions abandoned at the first sign of real resistance. They rescue their civilians and run like scared children every single time. More alien voices joined in approval. The Krathan representative slammed his massive fist on his chair's armrest, making a sound like thunder. "Cowards!" he bellowed. "They fight like prey animals, not warriors." The Altarian delegate's crystalline voice chimed like bells. "Our analysis confirms their technological inferiority. Their weapons are centuries behind our own. Their shields fail under minimal pressure. They pose no threat to any civilized species." Chen listened to them describe her people as weak and primitive. She remembered the families loading onto evacuation ships as enemy forces approached. She thought about the colony children who had never seen Earth, now refugees fleeing from world to world. She recalled the mining crews who died when their escape pods were targeted by raiders who thought it was amusing sport. The attacks had grown worse over time. What started as raids on remote outposts had become systematic destruction of human settlements. Entire colony ships full of families had been destroyed just to send a message. Agricultural worlds that fed millions were left as burning wastelands. The aliens were not just conquering human territory. They were trying to wipe humanity from the galaxy entirely. "The human ambassador will now present Earth's final response," Kethavar announced with obvious satisfaction. "Will your species submit to proper authority? Or must we complete the task of removing your kind from civilized space?" Chen stood slowly and walked to the speaker's podium. Around the chamber, alien representatives leaned forward with interest. Some looked bored, expecting another desperate plea for mercy. Others seemed excited, hoping to hear humanity's final surrender. A few appeared hungry, already planning how to divide human territory among themselves. She placed her hands on the podium and looked around the chamber one more time. These beings had convinced themselves that humans were nothing but animals who had gotten lucky with space travel. They believed their own propaganda about human weakness and cowardice. They thought the retreating human fleets were proof of military failure rather than careful strategy. Chen reached into her jacket and pulled out a small silver device, no bigger than her palm. She placed it carefully on the podium's surface and stepped back. The device began to glow with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of the atmospheric system seemed to fade away. Every alien representative was staring at the small device, suddenly uncertain about what they were seeing. Chen looked up at Admiral Kethvar and spoke in the same calm, diplomatic voice she had used for 3 years. But now there was something different in her tone, something that made the massive Krathan warriors shift uncomfortably in their seats and caused the Altarian crystals to dim with worry. For 3 years, she said clearly, humanity has asked politely for peace. We have requested diplomatic solutions to our conflicts. We have tried to resolve our differences through negotiation and compromise. We have shown patience and restraint even as our people died. She paused and touched the glowing device. 3 years ago, when these attacks began, my government gave me very specific instructions. I was to exhaust every possible diplomatic option before moving to the next phase of our response. I was to give every species in this council the chance to choose cooperation over conflict. The blue light from the device grew brighter, and strange patterns began to appear in the air above it. Some of the alien representatives recognized the beginnings of a holographic projection system, but the technology looked different from anything they had seen before. I am here today to inform this council that all diplomatic options have now been exhausted, Chen continued. The attacks on human settlements will end immediately. The raids on our ships will cease. The systematic destruction of our colonies will stop. Admiral Kethvar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. And if we refuse? What will your primitive species do to enforce these demands? Send more of your pathetic ships to run away from real military forces? Chen looked directly at him, and for the first time in 3 years she smiled. It was not the polite diplomatic smile she had worn to countless meetings. It was something altogether more unsettling. Admiral, she said quietly, you have made one critical error in your assessment of humanity. You have confused our politeness with weakness. You have mistaken our restraint for inability. You have assumed that because we chose not to fight, we cannot fight. The device on the podium pulsed brighter, and the holographic projection system activated fully. 3-dimensional images began to form in the air above the chamber, showing star maps and ship formations that made several representatives gasp in shock. Chen's voice remained conversational, almost friendly, but her words carried an unmistakable finality. This is your warning. Stop attacking our people, or we will stop pretending to be polite. The last word echoed through the suddenly silent chamber as the true scope of humanity's response began to unfold in the holographic display above their heads. The holographic display expanded above the council chamber, filling the vast space with images that made even the most confident alien representatives step back in shock. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Earth hung in the center of the projection, but it looked nothing like the pastoral world they had imagined. The planet was surrounded by massive orbital installations that stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. What the aliens had dismissed as simple space, stations and communication arrays revealed their true nature as the hologram rotated and zoomed in for detail. Weapon platforms the size of small moons unfolded like mechanical flowers, revealing arrays of devices that hurt to look at directly. The very geometry of the weapons seemed wrong, as if they existed in more dimensions than the 3-dimensional space around them. Energy readings scrolled past the display in alien languages, but the numbers were so high that several representatives' translation devices simply gave up and displayed error messages. For decades, Chen said calmly, as the images continued to rotate, you have observed our defensive installations and concluded they were primitive constructions, built by a species barely capable of space travel. You saw what we wanted you to see. Admiral Kethvar stared at the display with growing horror. The orbital weapons around Earth were connected by a network of energy streams that formed complex patterns in space. Each pattern seemed to be a mathematical equation made physical, and the math involved concepts that Zephyrian science had only theorized about in their most advanced research facilities. This is impossible, he whispered. No species could build technology like this. Our scientists say these energy configurations cannot exist in normal space. Chen touched the device again, and the hologram shifted to show a new view. Your scientists are partially correct, Admiral. These configurations cannot exist in what you call normal space. We learned long ago that limiting ourselves to 3 dimensions was an unnecessary restriction. The Krathen representative was the first to find his voice. Tricks, illusions. No species advances this far without the galaxy knowing. The hologram changed again, this time showing the recent battle at Proxima Station. The assembled aliens watched as human ships engaged Zephyrian forces in what they remembered as a crushing defeat for humanity. But now they could see the battle from a different angle, with sensor readings that revealed what had really happened. The human ships had not been fighting to win. They had been fighting to learn. Every weapon fired at them was analyzed in real time. Every tactical move by the enemy was recorded and studied. The human vessels that appeared to be retreating in damage and confusion were actually gathering intelligence while herding the alien forces into predetermined positions. "You won that battle," Chen said to Admiral Kethvar. "Because we let you win. We needed to understand your weapons, your tactics, your psychology. Every defeat you think you scored against us was actually a lesson we taught ourselves about your capabilities." The display zoomed out to show a wider view of the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian military installations, hegemony fleet positions, and Krathen fortress worlds. But as the Council watched, blue dots began appearing around every red one. The blue dots represented human ships that had been hiding in the same systems, watching and waiting. "Impossible," breathed the Altarian delegate. "Our sensors would have detected any ships in our home systems. We have quantum scanners that can find a single spacecraft anywhere within a star system." Chen nodded politely. "Yes, your sensors are quite sophisticated. They can detect any ship that exists in normal spacetime. Unfortunately for your security, our vessels learned to exist slightly outside normal spacetime while remaining fully functional in this dimension." She gestured to the display, where the numbers of blue dots continued to multiply. "Every human ship you thought you destroyed actually cloaked and followed your forces home. For 3 years, we have been mapping your defenses, studying your technology, and positioning our forces around every military target you possess." The silence in the chamber was broken by nervous whispers and the sound of several representatives frantically trying to contact their home governments. The nebulons were flickering rapidly between different colors, which their species did when extremely agitated. 2 of the smaller species delegates had simply fainted. Admiral Kethvar's scarred face had turned a pale shade of blue. "You're saying your ships have been in our home systems for years? Watching us? Learning our secrets?" "Not just watching," Chen replied. "Testing. The power fluctuations your technicians blamed on solar storms? Those were our ships studying your energy grids. The communication glitches that lasted for exactly 37 seconds every few months. We were examining your network protocols. The minor navigational errors that occasionally affected your patrol routes. We were learning how your ships think." The hologram shifted again to show technical specifications that made the alien engineers in the chamber gasp. Human technology was not just advanced. It was fundamentally different from anything the galactic civilizations had developed. Where other species had built bigger guns and stronger shields, humans had apparently rewritten the basic laws of physics. "Your species developed along predictable paths," Chen explained. "You started with chemical rockets, moved to fusion drives, then to antimatter engines. You built energy weapons by focusing particle beams and plasma bolts. You created shields by deflecting or absorbing incoming attacks." She paused and smiled that same unsettling smile. "Humans took a different approach. We decided that if the laws of physics were inconvenient, we would simply use different laws. Our ships don't travel faster than light. They convince space itself to be smaller. Our weapons don't destroy targets. They persuade matter to stop being organized in hostile ways. Our shields don't block attacks. They encourage incoming weapons to exist somewhere else." The Krathen representative stood up abruptly, his massive frame shaking with rage. "You speak nonsense. Physics has laws that cannot be changed." Chen looked at him with genuine curiosity. "Tell me, honored delegate, what do you think consciousness is?" The question seemed to confuse him. "Consciousness? It is awareness, thought, the ability to process information." "Exactly," Chen said. "And what does your science tell you about how consciousness interacts with quantum mechanics?" Several of the more scientifically minded representatives began to look very uncomfortable. The interaction between consciousness and quantum physics was one of the great unsolved mysteries that every advanced civilization eventually encountered. "Humans solved that mystery," Chen continued. "We learned that consciousness is not separate from the physical universe. It is the mechanism by which the universe decides what to be real. Once we understood that, the rest became merely an engineering problem. Admiral Kethvar was staring at the display where human ships continued to appear around every Zephyrian military installation. "How many ships do you have?" Chen touched the device one more time, and the display zoomed out to show the entire galaxy. Blue dots appeared everywhere, not just around military targets but around every inhabited world, every space station, every asteroid mining facility. The human presence was so vast and pervasive that it looked like the galaxy itself had been wrapped in a blue web. "Admiral," she said quietly, "we have enough." The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives shouted questions, demands, and threats. Through it all, Chen stood calmly at the podium, her hand resting on the small device that had revealed the true face of humanity to the galaxy. "The attacks on our colonies end now," she said, her voice somehow carrying clearly through the noise. "Not because we are asking you to stop, because we are telling you that you will stop." The chaos in the chamber died suddenly as the holographic display updated with new information. Real-time data streams began flowing across the projection, showing events happening across the galaxy at that very moment. The alien representatives watched in stunned silence as three impossible things occurred simultaneously. In the Proxima system, Admiral Kethvar's primary attack fleet was in the middle of bombarding the human colony of New Geneva. The Zephyrian forces had been confident of another easy victory, surrounding the small human defensive force with overwhelming firepower. But as the Council watched, space around the Zephyrian ships began to shimmer and distort. Human vessels materialized from nowhere, not dozens but hundreds of them, appearing in perfect formation around every enemy ship. The Zephyrian commanders could be heard screaming orders through their communication channels, demanding to know where the human fleet had come from. Their sensors showed nothing unusual seconds before, empty space one moment, an overwhelming human presence the next, but the human ships did not attack. Instead, they began broadcasting on all frequencies, sending data streams directly to every Zephyrian vessel. The council chamber's speakers crackled to life with intercepted communications from Admiral Kethvar's own flagship. "All ships, this is Admiral Kethvar. We have achieved orbital dominance over the human colony. Begin systematic bombardment of civilian population centers. I want maximum terror effect for our propaganda videos." The voice was unmistakably the Admiral's, but the words were from a private communication sent weeks earlier. More recordings followed, each one more damning than the last. Plans to enslave human children for forced labor, discussions about using human settlements as hunting grounds for Zephyrian entertainment, casual conversations about genocide delivered in the same tone most people use to discuss dinner plans. Admiral Kethvar's face had gone completely pale. "Those are classified military communications. How did you gain access to our encrypted channels?" Chen gestured to the display. "Admiral, you're thinking too small. We didn't gain access to your communications. We've been listening to everything you've ever said, to anyone, anywhere, for the past 3 years." The second impossible event was happening in hegemony space. Every military installation belonging to the alliance of species that supported the Zephyrian attacks experienced the same phenomenon at exactly the same moment. All power simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, just stopped. Fusion reactors shut down cleanly. Energy weapons powered off mid-charge. Life support systems switched to backup power that also mysteriously failed to function. For exactly 60 seconds, every hegemony military facility in the galaxy went completely dark. When power returned, the installations found new software installed in their most secure computer systems, programs that politely introduced themselves as Human Oversight Protocol, and explained that they had been running quietly in the background for months. Learning about hegemony military capabilities while preparing for this demonstration, the messages were disturbingly cheerful in tone. "Hello, we're sorry for the inconvenience, but we needed to show you that your security systems have some flaws. Don't worry, we fixed them for you. Your new security protocols will prevent anyone else from doing what we just did. Well, anyone except us. We can still do this whenever we want. Have a nice day." The hegemony representative, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes, was clicking his mandibles rapidly in distress. "Impossible. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. No artificial intelligence in the galaxy is advanced enough to penetrate our networks." "You're absolutely right," Chen agreed. "No artificial intelligence could do what we just did." But we didn't use artificial intelligence. We used something much more sophisticated, human intelligence enhanced by quantum consciousness manipulation. Every human child learns basic reality engineering in primary school. The third impossible event was the most unsettling of all. In the Crathan home system, their 3 moons had been moved. Not destroyed by weapons, not cracked by gravitational stress, but carefully relocated to new orbital positions that spelled out a word in ancient Crathan script. Stop. The gravitational mathematics required for such precision was beyond anything the galaxy's greatest scientists had thought possible. Moving 3 moons without destroying the planetary ecosystem, they orbited required calculations involving millions of variables and the ability to manipulate fundamental forces with surgical precision. The Crathan representative was stammering in shock, his massive tusks chattering as he tried to process what he was seeing. The moons are sacred moons. How did you move them without destroying our world? Chen looked at him with something resembling sympathy. Honored delegate, your people worship strength above all else. You believe that true power comes from the ability to destroy, but moving your moons required something much more difficult than destruction. It required perfect control. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed technical readouts from the moon relocation. Destroying a moon is easy. Any species with antimatter weapons can crack a satellite into pieces. But moving 3 moons into a specific pattern while maintaining their structural integrity and preserving the planetary ecosystem, that requires understanding forces that your science hasn't even discovered yet. The chamber had fallen completely silent, except for the sound of nervous breathing from dozens of different species. The alien representatives were beginning to understand that they had not been fighting a war against a weaker species. They had been playing a game whose rules they didn't understand against opponents who were several levels above them. These demonstrations, Chen continued, required less than 0.3% of humanity's actual military capability. We chose these specific actions to illustrate 3 important points. She touched the device again, and the display shifted to show comparative analyses of human versus alien technology. The numbers were so lopsided that several representatives' translation devices simply gave up and displayed question marks. First, we have been listening to everything you've said and watching everything you've done for years. There are no secrets in your governments that we don't know, no military plans we haven't read, no private communications we haven't heard. Admiral Kethvar tried to interrupt, but Chen continued without pausing. Second, every computer system you consider secure is actually running human software. We could shut down your entire technological infrastructure permanently if we chose to. Your ships, your weapons, your life support. All of it depends on systems we now control. The hegemony representative was vibrating with anxiety, his insectoid limbs twitching uncontrollably. Third, we can manipulate fundamental forces in ways that your science says are impossible. We can move planets, redirect stars, or convince matter to exist in different configurations. The laws of physics are tools we learn to use, not limitations we accept. Chen walked around the podium, her movements calm and deliberate. Every species in this council evolved on a single world and expanded carefully into space, developing technology that built upon what came before. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world that was actively trying to kill us, then spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare against ourselves. She stopped and looked directly at Admiral Kethvar. By the time we reached the stars, we had already solved problems that most civilizations never encounter. We had learned to think in ways that other species find incomprehensible. We had developed weapons that work by convincing reality to be different. The Admiral's voice was barely a whisper. What? What do you want? Chen smiled that same unsettling smile. We want exactly what we've always wanted, Admiral. We want to be left alone to live in peace. We want to trade with civilizations that treat us as equals. We want to explore the galaxy and learn about the wonders it contains. She paused and her expression grew cold. What we will not accept is being treated as prey animals by species who mistake our kindness for weakness. The attacks on our people end now. This is not a request or a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. The holographic display updated one final time, showing the current positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. Every hostile fleet was surrounded. Every military installation was monitored. Every government facility was under observation. You have 1 hour to recall all forces attacking human settlements, Chen announced. After that, we stop being polite. The hour deadline passed, with most alien forces scrambling to withdraw from human space. But Admiral Kethavar's pride proved stronger than his wisdom. His flagship and 3 escort vessels remained in orbit around New Geneva, their weapons still trained on the human colony below. The Admiral had convinced himself that humanity was bluffing, that no species could possibly possess the technology they had demonstrated. In the council chamber, the holographic display showed real-time feeds from the Proxima system. The alien representatives watched as Chen's expression shifted from diplomatic patience to something far more dangerous. Her hand moved to the silver device on the podium, and her voice carried clearly through the suddenly silent chamber. "Admiral Kethavar has chosen to test our resolve," she announced. "He will now learn the difference between human politeness and human capability." The display zoomed in on the Admiral's flagship, a massive Zephyrian dreadnought bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could withstand direct hits from antimatter warheads. It was the pride of their fleet, considered indestructible by conventional weapons. The ship hung in space like a metallic mountain, its hull scarred by 100 victories against weaker species. Without any visible cause, the dreadnought simply stopped working, not destroyed, not damaged, but disabled in ways that defied understanding. The ship's fusion reactors continued operating normally, but their energy output simply vanished somewhere between the reactor cores and the power distribution systems. Weapon systems tried to fire but found that their targeting computers had forgotten how to aim. Life support continued functioning, but artificial gravity turned off and on in patterns that spelled out "surrender now" in Zephyrian script. The 3 escort vessels fared even worse. Their hulls began to glow with soft rainbow colors as human technology convinced their molecular structure to become something new. The ships remained intact and their crews unharmed, but their armor plating had been transformed into what appeared to be crystalline flowers that bloomed across their surfaces in beautiful, impossible patterns. Admiral Kethavar's voice crackled through the communication system, filled with rage and confusion. "What have you done to my ships? This is some kind of trick. No weapon can do this." Chen's reply was calm and educational. "Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of weapons. We didn't attack your ships. We simply asked their constituent atoms to reorganize themselves into more aesthetically pleasing configurations. The change is entirely reversible once you learn to behave properly." But the truly devastating revelation came when Chen activated a new section of the holographic display. The projection showed not just the current situation, but a complete timeline of human activities over the past 3 years. Every alien representative in the chamber could see the staggering scope of humanity's intelligence network. Human agents had infiltrated every major government in the galaxy, not as spies hiding their identity, but as respected advisors, trusted scientists, and influential diplomats who had been quietly shaping policy for decades. The primitive humans had been present at every important decision, guiding galactic civilization toward patterns that served human interests while appearing to serve everyone else. The Altarian delegate's crystalline form flickered with shock as she recognized several human names from her own. Government's Advisory Council. Dr. Martinez, Professor Thompson, they've been with us for 15 years. They helped design our defense systems. Dr. Martinez is one of our finest xenopsychologists, Chen confirmed. Professor Thompson specializes in applied mathematics and consciousness theory. They volunteered for deep cover assignments because they believed that understanding other species was the key to eventual peace. The scope of human infiltration was breathtaking. Critical systems throughout the galaxy had been designed or modified by human experts who were openly working in their own names. Defense networks, communication protocols, and even basic infrastructure had been built with hidden backdoors that allowed human oversight without detection. "You see," Chen explained as the data continued to flow across the display, "while you were planning to conquer us, we were learning everything about you. Your languages, your cultures, your weaknesses, your fears. We studied your art, your literature, your philosophy. We learned to think like you think and want what you want." The Krathan representative's massive fist slammed down on his chair. "Deception lies. You pretended to be our friends while planning our destruction." Chen turned to look at him with genuine surprise. "Destruction? Honored delegate, you misunderstand our intentions completely. We didn't infiltrate your governments to plan your destruction. We infiltrated them to prevent your self-destruction." The holographic display shifted again, showing classified documents from a dozen different species, military plans for wars against each other, resource conflicts that would have devastated entire sectors, political schemes that would have led to the collapse of galactic civilization. But in each case, the plans had been quietly modified or abandoned due to advice from human consultants who had suggested better alternatives. The Zephyrian-Altarian War that was planned for next year, Chen said, pointing to specific documents. Dr. Martinez convinced your leaders that a trade agreement would be more profitable than conquest. The hegemony resource conflicts that would have starved 3 systems, Professor Thompson's economic model showed how cooperative development would benefit everyone, more than competitive exploitation. Admiral Kethvar's voice came through the speakers again, weaker now. You've been manipulating all of us. Everything we've done, every decision we've made, has been your own choice, Chen finished firmly. We never forced anyone to do anything. We simply provided better information and more attractive alternatives. When given the choice between war and profit, most species choose profit. When shown the choice between destruction and growth, most leaders choose growth. The alien representatives were beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. They had not been conquered by force or threatened into submission. They had been gradually guided toward better decisions by advisors who understood their needs better than they understood themselves. But some of you, Chen continued, her voice growing colder, chose aggression despite having better options available. Some of you decided that conquest was more appealing than cooperation. Some of you looked at our offers of friendship and decided that we would make better slaves than partners. The display zoomed back out to show the galaxy-wide view of human forces. Every hostile fleet was surrounded, but the human ships had not fired a single shot. Instead, they were broadcasting the same message on all frequencies, an offer of immediate ceasefire and negotiations for permanent peace. Even now, Chen said, we are offering you the choice to stop fighting and start building something better together. Our ships could destroy every military vessel in the galaxy within the next hour, but we would prefer not to. We would rather have friends than graves. Admiral Kethavar's dreadnought had gone completely dark except for life support systems. The Admiral himself appeared on the communication screen, his blue face showing a mixture of defeat and dawning understanding. Why? He asked quietly. Why did you hide your true capabilities? Why pretend to be weak when you could have ruled the galaxy from the beginning? Chen's expression softened slightly. Because we remember what it was like to be afraid, Admiral. Humans spent thousands of years being the weaker species on our own world, wondering if the stronger predators would choose to hunt us or ignore us. We learned what it felt like to be helpless. She gestured to the display showing peaceful human colonies and thriving trade stations. When we finally became strong enough to be safe, we had to decide what kind of strength we wanted to be. We could have become the predators that once hunted us, or we could become the protectors we wished had existed when we were weak. The chamber was completely silent as the implications of her words sank in. Humanity had not hidden their strength out of fear. They had hidden it out of compassion, hoping that other species would choose cooperation over domination without needing to be forced into it. You've been testing us, the Altarian delegate said suddenly. All of this, the attacks, the apparent retreats, the diplomatic meetings, it was all a test to see what kind of civilizations we really were. Chen nodded slowly. We needed to know if the galaxy was ready for the truth about human capabilities. We needed to see if other species would choose peace when they thought they were stronger, or if they would only behave when forced to by superior power. Admiral Kethavar's voice was barely audible, and we failed the test. Some of you did, Chen agreed, but it's not too late to choose differently. 6 months later, the galaxy had transformed in ways that none of the alien species could have imagined. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same, but the atmosphere was completely different. Representatives who had once plotted conquest now worked together on joint research projects. Species that had been enemies for centuries were sharing technology and resources under the guidance of the new Terran Accords. Dr. Sarah. Chen stood at the same podium where she had delivered humanity's ultimatum, but now she wore the simple blue robes of the Galactic Cooperation Council's first human administrator. The silver device that had revealed Earth's true nature was gone, replaced by a holographic projector that showed peaceful scenes from across the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar sat in the front row, no longer wearing the battle-scarred armor of a Zephyrian military commander. Instead, he wore the simple gray uniform of a rehabilitation counselor, working to help other military leaders transition from conquest-based thinking to cooperation-based planning. His dreadnought had been converted into a mobile hospital ship, its weapon systems replaced with medical facilities that served species throughout the galaxy. The transformation had not happened through force or threats. Once humanity revealed their true capabilities, they had immediately begun offering something far more valuable than military superiority: solutions to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries. The Altarian energy crisis that had driven their expansion wars was solved within weeks when human scientists shared clean fusion technology that could power their crystal cities for millennia. The hegemony food shortages that fueled their raiding behavior disappeared when human agricultural experts taught them how to grow crops in previously unusable environments. The Krathan warrior culture found new purpose when humanity offered them the role of galactic peacekeepers, protecting weaker species instead of conquering them. But the most profound change was not technological, it was philosophical. Humanity had proven that strength and kindness were not opposites, that the most powerful species in the galaxy could choose to be gentle teachers rather than cruel masters. Chen activated the holographic projector, showing the latest reports from across human space. Former battlefields had become thriving trade centers. Military shipyards were building exploration vessels instead of warships. Species that had never spoken to each other were working together on projects that benefited everyone. 6 months ago, she began, addressing the assembled representatives, this council was preparing for what you thought would be humanity's final surrender. Today we gather to celebrate the establishment of the first truly peaceful galactic civilization in recorded history. The nebula delegate flickered through a spectrum of pleased colors. The transformation has exceeded our most optimistic projections. Crime rates have dropped by 70% across all systems. Interspecies conflicts have virtually disappeared. Economic prosperity has increased exponentially. Chen nodded, but her expression remained serious. These improvements didn't happen because humanity forced them upon you. They happened because we finally gave you better alternatives to choose from. When species have access to unlimited clean energy, abundant food, and profitable trade relationships, very few choose warfare and conquest. Admiral Kethvar raised his hand to speak, and Chen nodded permission. I want to address something that many of us have been wondering about, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. Dr. Chen, your species could have conquered the entire galaxy in a matter of hours. You could have enslaved us all or wiped us out completely. Instead, you chose to help us become better versions of ourselves. Why? The question hung in the air as Chen considered her response. Around the chamber, dozens of alien representatives leaned forward with interest. This was the heart of what made humanity so different from every other species they had encountered. Admiral, Chen said finally, imagine that you had spent your entire childhood being hunted by creatures much stronger and faster than yourself. Imagine living every day in fear, never knowing if the next sunrise would be your last. Then imagine that one day you became strong enough to hunt those creatures in return. She paused, letting the image sink in. Most species would become the hunters, seeking revenge for their years of fear. They would tell themselves that strength gives them the right to dominate others, just as they were once dominated. The chamber was completely silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. But humans learned something different during our time as prey, Chen continued. We learned that being strong doesn't require being cruel. We learned that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when not to use that ability. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed images of human children playing with alien youngsters in integrated schools throughout the galaxy. We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare against ourselves. We learned every possible way to cause pain, destruction, and death. We became the most efficient killers in the galaxy. The Krathan representative shifted uncomfortably, his tusks gleaming in the chamber's soft lighting. But we also learned something else, Chen said, her voice growing warmer. We learned that the strongest person is not the one who can defeat everyone else. It's the one who can help everyone else become stronger. We discovered that teaching someone to fish is more impressive than being able to catch all the fish yourself. Admiral Kethvar spoke again, his voice thoughtful. You're saying that humanity chose to be teachers instead of conquerors. More than that, Chen replied. We chose to be gardeners. A conqueror takes what already exists and claims it for himself. A teacher shares knowledge but expects students to remain dependent. A gardener plants seeds, tends them carefully, and creates something entirely new that can grow and flourish independently. The holographic display shifted to show a time-lapse view of the galaxy over the past 6 months. The changes were dramatic. War zones transforming into gardens, military bases becoming research centers, fortress worlds opening their doors to peaceful trade and cultural exchange. The galaxy you see today is not something we built for you, Chen explained. It's something we helped you build for yourselves. Every innovation, every peace treaty, every act of cooperation came from your own species making better choices when given better options. The Altarian delegate's crystalline voice chimed with curiosity. But surely there must be some species that refused to cooperate. Some civilizations that continued to choose aggression, despite the alternatives you offered. Chen's expression grew sad. There were a few. The Vorthan Empire refused all offers of cooperation and attempted to launch a surprise attack on human civilian targets. The Nexus Collective tried to steal our technology to use against their neighbors. 3 smaller warrior cultures declared that they would rather die fighting than live in peace. The chamber waited tensely for her to continue. They were given exactly what they asked for, Chen said quietly. The Vorthan Empire discovered that their entire fleet had been replaced with holographic projections, while their real ships were disassembled at the molecular level. The Nexus Collective found that the technology they tried to steal was actually a consciousness transfer device that convinced them they preferred peaceful research to conquest. The warrior cultures were relocated to pocket dimensions where they could fight eternal battles against holographic enemies without harming anyone real. Admiral Kethvar looked shocked. You didn't destroy them? Destruction is wasteful, Chen replied. We gave them the choice to change their minds, and several have already chosen to rejoin galactic civilization. The others are free to continue their preferred lifestyle in environments designed specifically for their needs. She touched the holographic projector's controls, and the display showed the current state of human space. Thousands of worlds thriving in peace. Billions of beings living in prosperity and safety. Research stations pushing the boundaries of science and art in ways that benefited everyone. This is what humanity offers to the galaxy, Chen said. Not conquest, not domination, but the chance to become the best possible versions of yourselves. We've learned that the most powerful force in the universe is not destruction or control. It's growth. The Krathan representative stood slowly, his massive frame radiating respect rather than aggression. On behalf of my people, I want to formally thank humanity for showing us a better way to be strong. We spent centuries believing that might made right, never realizing that true might means having the power to make things right. Similar statements came from representatives around the chamber. Species after species acknowledged that humanity had given them something they never knew they wanted, the chance to be proud of their strength without being ashamed of their actions. Chen smiled, and this time it was the warm, genuine expression of someone who had helped friends achieve their dreams. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to grow together, she said. We've barely begun to explore the wonders it contains or discover the incredible things we can accomplish when we work as partners instead of competitors. As the session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Admiral Kethvar approached the podium.